The CEO's voice echoed across the luxury dealership parking lot so loudly that even people on the far side of the building stopped and stared. The bright afternoon sun reflected off a breathtaking $5 million hypercar, a machine so rare that only a handful existed in the entire world. Cameras flashed. Wealthy collectors watched. Employees stood frozen. And right in the middle of it all stood a grease-stained mechanic wearing faded work boots. The billionaire CEO looked him up and down with visible disgust. What happened next would cost one man his pride, save another man's future, and teach everyone watching a lesson they would never forget. Before we begin, if you believe kindness matters more than status, and that everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share this story with someone who needs inspiration, and subscribe to Soulful Stories for more emotional and life-changing stories. The mechanic's name was Everett Hale. At 43 years old, Everett's life looked nothing like the dreams he once carried. Years earlier, he had been considered one of the most talented automotive specialists in the state. He could diagnose problems that computers missed. He could rebuild engines that others declared dead. People drove hundreds of miles just to have him work on their vehicles. But talent alone doesn't protect people from life. 5 years earlier, Everett's wife had passed away after a long illness. Medical bills swallowed everything they owned. Their savings disappeared. Their house was sold. The future they had spent decades building vanished almost overnight. Since then, Everett had been raising his teenage daughter, Naomi, alone. Every morning before sunrise, he worked at a small independent garage on the edge of town. Every evening he returned home exhausted but determined to give Naomi a better life than the one he currently lived. He never complained. He never asked for pity. He simply kept going. The garage where Everett worked wasn't impressive. The paint on the walls peeled. The tools were old. The office air conditioner barely functioned. But one thing made the place special. Everett. People trusted him because he was honest. If a repair cost $20, he charged $20. If a customer didn't need something fixed, he said so. In an industry where many people expected dishonesty, Everett's integrity became his reputation. That reputation eventually reached some unexpected ears. A luxury car exhibition was being held in the city that weekend. Collectors, investors, celebrities, and executives from around the world gathered to display vehicles worth millions. One of those attendees was Roland Mercer. Roland was the founder and CEO of a technology empire valued at billions of dollars. His companies appeared in headlines constantly. His face appeared on magazine covers. People described him as brilliant. People also described him as impossible. Roland had built enormous success but had gradually developed a habit of looking down on anyone he considered beneath him. To him, wealth measured worth. That attitude followed him everywhere. The centerpiece of Roland's collection was a custom-built hypercar valued at nearly $5 million. It wasn't just expensive. It was unique. Every component had been engineered specifically for the vehicle. There were no replacements sitting on shelves. No backup models. No second chances. When the hypercar arrived at the exhibition grounds, everything seemed perfect. Until the engine refused to start. At first nobody panicked. The manufacturer's specialists checked diagnostics. Nothing. Engineers connected computers. Nothing. Luxury mechanics from multiple dealerships arrived. Still nothing. Hours passed. The crowd began whispering. News crews noticed. Roland became furious. By midday, frustration had spread throughout the event. Then someone mentioned Everett Hale. One local mechanic quietly told organizers that if anyone could identify the issue, it was Everett. At first they laughed. How could a small-town mechanic succeed where elite specialists had failed? But desperation eventually replaced pride. A representative drove directly to Everett's garage. When the request arrived, Everett hesitated. He had never worked on that particular hypercar. Yet he agreed to take a look. Not because of money. Not because of prestige. Because solving problems was what he did. An hour later, Everett arrived at the exhibition. People immediately judged him. His truck was old. His clothes were stained. His toolbox looked worn. Some executives exchanged amused smiles. Several collectors rolled their eyes. Roland himself looked offended. To him, Everett appeared completely out of place among the luxury vehicles. Still, with no alternatives remaining, he reluctantly allowed Everett to inspect the car. The mechanic quietly opened panels and examined components. He didn't rush. He didn't perform for the crowd. He simply focused. Minutes turned into nearly an hour. While everyone else had relied heavily on computers, Everett relied on experience. He listened. He observed. He noticed details others overlooked. Finally he stood. The problem had been identified. A microscopic manufacturing defect hidden deep within a custom fuel delivery assembly had triggered a chain reaction that confused the vehicle's systems. The repair itself wasn't impossible. But it required precision. One mistake could destroy millions of dollars worth of components. Everett calculated the labor, risk, and specialized fabrication required. Then he calmly presented his estimate. $899. The crowd seemed surprised. For a vehicle worth $5 million, the price was remarkably reasonable. Yet Roland's expression darkened. He stared at Everett. Then he laughed. Not a friendly laugh. A cruel one. Several people nearby lowered their eyes. The CEO loudly questioned how someone dressed like Everett could possibly justify charging nearly $900. His words carried across the parking lot. People heard every syllable. The insult wasn't about money. It was about respect. Roland wasn't refusing the repair cost. He was refusing to believe someone he considered ordinary possessed valuable expertise. For a moment, silence settled over the crowd. Everyone waited to see how Everett would respond. Many expected anger. Others expected embarrassment. Instead, Everett simply closed his toolbox. His face remained calm. His voice remained steady. He explained that the price reflected decades of experience, technical knowledge, and the responsibility involved. Then he added something nobody expected. If Roland didn't believe the repair was worth the cost, he was free to decline. But without that repair, the vehicle wasn't going anywhere. The crowd fell silent. Those words landed harder than any insult. Because they were true. The hypercar remained completely disabled. The engineers had failed. The specialists had failed. The manufacturer had failed. And now the only person who understood the problem was walking away. Roland watched Everett begin loading his tools into his truck. For the first time all day, uncertainty appeared on the billionaire's face. The cameras were still rolling. The crowd was still watching. The vehicle remained motionless. And suddenly, money alone couldn't solve the problem. As Everett prepared to leave, his phone vibrated. It was Naomi. She had just received an acceptance letter from a prestigious engineering university. Her dream school. The excitement in her voice made Everett smile despite everything that had happened. But after hanging up, reality returned. Tuition costs. Housing expenses. Books. Transportation. He had no idea how he would afford it. Yet he refused to let his daughter see his worries. She deserved hope. Not fear. Meanwhile, Roland stood beside his silent hypercar, surrounded by advisors who suddenly seemed far less confident than before. The billionaire had spent years believing every obstacle could be solved by money, influence, or authority. For the first time in a long time, he was confronting a different truth. Some things depended on people. And people could not always be bought. They had to be respected. What Roland did next would change not only the fate of his prized vehicle but also the future of a mechanic and his daughter in ways neither of them could possibly imagine. And as the afternoon sun slowly descended over the exhibition grounds, the crowd sensed that the real story was only beginning. If this story has touched your heart so far, please like the video, leave a comment, and share it with someone who believes hard work deserves respect regardless of status or wealth. Special request, comment below with the words, "Respect earns respect," if you believe every honest worker deserves dignity. Because sometimes the most valuable thing in the world isn't a $5 million car. It's the person everyone else overlooked. Reply with, "Continue part 1, and I'll continue the story toward the emotional ending and complete the full narrative.